New information from the Paris summit suggests that climate change may be a contributing factor to global terrorism. Oh yeah? Well then how can people still kill each other when it's cold? In an interview during the Paris summit, acclaimed scientist and bow tie enthusiast Bill Nye suggested a link between climate change and ISIS activity. And even though that sounds like something he pulled out of his ass after losing the note cards to his real speech, this idea is gaining a lot of traction. Nye argues that years of drought pushed rural Syrians into cities which quickly became too crowded to provide adequate work. Starved and disillusioned, Syrians would have been much more likely to turn to radical solutions like ISIS. Like, you know how angry everybody got in Do the Right Thing? Well, it's just like that, but with a completely different soundtrack. And this thinking is not without precedent. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called the crisis in Darfur the world's first climate change conflict. If you put a map of East African wars side by side with a map of drought in the region, you see a lot of overlap. The same map comparison with ISIS activity in Iraq and Syria supports this idea. Retired Army Colonel and defense consultant Pete Newell describes watching tribes along the Iraq-Iran border going to war over water rights. And I can totally relate. I mean, the same thing happened in my neighborhood when the city of Seattle said we could only water our azaleas every other week. A lot of bloodshed that summer. Stanford earth science professor Marshall Burke studies the relationship between weather and violence because studying just weather wasn't getting him laid. Based on macro calculations, he concludes that a rise in temperature of 1 degree correlates to a 4.5% increase in civil unrest. The model estimates a 54% growth of armed conflict by the year 2030 if temperatures rise as predicted. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel just called global warming a national security problem. Even the Pentagon now recognizes climate change as a threat multiplier that will intensify the challenges of global instability, hunger, poverty, and conflict. Obviously, there's not a completely direct relationship between drought and ISIS. Even Marshall Burke's research contains the disclaimer that not every war starts with the weather. But if national security gets conservatives to finally acknowledge global warming, we'll take it. Until then, I'll be taking cold showers to stop the bad thoughts. Good night, America! Hey, thanks for watching The Daily Desk. If you like what you saw, click to subscribe, comment below, share the link with a friend or an enemy. I don't care.